Maybe you don't get our fear here now, because some analysts say, yeah, the ministry is right there. Let's just assume that the ministry has been handled by professionals. They say with this development, 3 banks. Now, before this, we had the issue of about 8 banks, and now we're getting to see 3 banks that have been nationalized. And they say, what does this spell for investors coming into the country being drawn by this same Ministry of Trade and Investment? Would there be any form of confidence left in the minds of investors with the development in the banking sector with regards to these 3 nationalized banks?
Yes. I will say yes and I will say no. Why I will say yes is that the coming months will unfold and we'll be able to see how the whole process is transparent. They need to publicly and immediately declare preferred bidders. They need to be able to let us know the process of bidding so that we'll be able to know where the country is coming from. Take, for example, I have my flair as regards the Pakistan people link with Bank PHB. Looking at their own economy there in Pakistan, what role have they been able to contribute in their own bank locally? We need to be able to, you don't just go and bring one company.
But Bank PHB is dead. It's
dead. I'm actually referring to it because we have the situation whereby Nigeria has a way of, maybe it's like not just West Africa. Nigeria is just like a dumping ground. And we suffer a lot. The situation whereby one organization, okay, take for example like the telecom sector now, whereby our link is always coming from South Africa, come from Egypt. And these people continue to come into the economy and they don't give in, but they take out. So we have that situation whereby we need to be able to solve that problem. If we are bringing professionals, we are bringing foreign investors, what is their role? Based on indigenization policy, based on the situation whereby we need to be able to boost our economy. Is that not why the IMF insisted that they need a foreign, before they can declare sovereign default on Greece, that they need a foreign guarantors? Is that not why Germany and France had to come in? Because they control the largest amount in the economic European Central Bank system.
Okay, staying with that issue of investment, one of the CBN directors said that by this action that the banking crisis of 2008-2009 has been settled finally. But now, with regards to foreign direct investment, do you think that is true?
I don't think so. It has not been solved, because we are looking at the situation whereby CBN should go out publicly and declare, in terms of all the money that comes from IMF, World Bank, how has it been utilized in terms of projects? By industry of council definition of SMEs, maybe organization based on 200 million excluding land and capital, how many actually micro business owners have been able to access funds?
But that's another kettle of fish, because if you look at this banking crisis, is the fact that banks did not really they were not giving monies to just the small and medium scale, and they were not giving money to the real economy. Let me just put it that way. This is that finally the banks are okay, they're in tip-top shape, and this our last act, the nationalization of those banks, means that we have banks that are ready to go. They're raring to go, so to speak. That's basically
let me borrow your word. Let me borrow your word that yes, they are ready to go. Yeah. Take for example now, when in a race, we are looking at it economically now. You bend down, you say on your marks, ready. After 2-3 minutes or so, before, let's say some maximum, we have some fastest runner at 9 seconds, 10 seconds. You have the situation whereby by 10 seconds we know who is the first, who is the second, and we have those who cannot complete it. Do you understand? The most important thing, good that yes, it's nationalized now. We have good framework, paper-wise and so. What about implementation? What about for them to be able to live up with its mission statement to ensure that, okay, new investors come in, who will be able to manage it healthy and ensure that it translates into wealth?
The statement here was that the banking crisis of 2008 and 2009 has been resolved. If another crisis comes up in future, that's another kettle of fish. But this particular crisis, the crisis caused during this...
five banks were actually taken over by CBN.
It's finally over. That's basically what they're saying. You don't believe that?
Well, to me, everybody is entitled to his own opinion. But if we need to be able to look at it economically, if amcon now, okay, take for example, it's been brokered by NDIC, but the role of NDIC is just to ensure that some all interest groups are taken care of, irrespective of whether amcon will be able to now take over and now hand over, because by law they are not enabled to be able to manage banks. They are just coming, take care of public assets, hand over to those who will manage these banks.
But what they've done is that they set up a management team.
I'm sure that's why they said after 3 years they'll be handed over, they'll be sold.
Yes.
But again, you know, my colleague asked you about the global financial crisis. Let's ask you, being a consultant, you have your eyes on the economies of most countries of the world. Look at what has just happened in the United States of America, dropping the AAA from S&P to AA and trying to see if they can get back to the AAA. And we saw the crisis in Greece and how they've been looking out for bailout. And again, well, the crisis in the UK and some other places. If you mix that with some kind of protest in the Arab world, I now draw it down to what we've just seen in this particular 3 banks. Are we likely, or are we in for another global financial crisis?
Yes. I've been saying on air at different fora that by 2015, by 2015, the corporate industry or the corporate world will start collapsing, and it will collapse to an extent whereby not until the Nigerian economy realize that entrepreneurs need to be boosted. But talking about, if we look at...
Can you expatiate on that? Because that's a real prophecy of doom, if you ask me.
Yes, I will, because if you look at what's happening in Syria, look at what's happening in Greece, you have the situation whereby the House of Assembly members in Greece or the elites refuse to be able to pay tax, and you now subject the common man to very strict austerity measures. Whereas you over there, you are entitled to all your allowance, you ensure a lot of things. And the same thing we are clamoring here locally. Look at the situation whereby our National Assembly, one person's take home per month or per week is enough to feed enough teachers.
Well, they're already talking about that, and they're not... there have been no austerity measures put in place.
The reason is that, let me tell you what's actually the problem. Like the US now, they focus a lot of attention trying to be able to look for what is not missing, especially in Iraq and a lot of countries. They have expended a lot of money. Good enough, they've seen need to start withdrawing their troops from all those war-torn areas. But that is not the solution. Because if you have not destabilized all those structures, as soon as you leave, those Al-Qaeda network will come back and it will boomerang on your economy. But we are looking at misplaced priority that has affected the United States government. And that is why they need to be able to go back to the drawing board and ensure that they look back to boosting their reserve.
So are we having misplaced priorities here in Nigeria?
Yes, if we are looking at it, we have the situation whereby, like in Nigeria, we have the framework. But this is not the first time we have Vision 2010, we have Vision 2020, we have best of economics who clamor the way forward. But when it comes to economic implementation, it is not, we are not getting it.
Let's tie this in. Diversifying the nation's reserves, foreign reserves. That there's a plan to diversify the foreign reserves. And now the state of our banking sector, and then the global financial crisis in 2015.
For us to be able to do that, you need to be able to watch, because if you don't make room for it, take for example,
isn't that what we're doing?
That is what we are actually doing.
Yes. Isn't that why we have to show up the banks? We have to make sure that investors' monies are safe, depositors' funds are safe, and as much as possible invite new investors and see what we can do about the economy. The CBN governor has been shouting on top of his voice and trying to make banks lend to the real economy. He says that's a major problem.
Let us see how true it is. Some couple of months ago, we were shouting cashless society, whereby it was about implementing the situation whereby minimum withdrawal balance of 150. Not up to 3 months again, he came up with Islamic banking, that we need to have a non-interest banking. And
these are all steps to ensure that small and medium-scale enterprises get the funds they need at almost no interest at all to them. Is that too bad a thing for you to get cheap capital?
No, of course, it's not too bad. But what we're actually saying is that how do entrepreneurs actually benefit from this? How do the micro business owners actually benefit from it? We are not after maybe a policy that will ensure, okay, yes, the big sectors. Because it's the, how will I put, I wouldn't want to mention names, but the big players naturally do not hold cash. You see is transfer money from one place to another. But we are looking at a situation whereby maybe you want to pay your rent, or you want to be able to do a little transaction. How would they implement it? Do we have POS? Do we have all the ATM facilities installed?
It goes back to what the CBN governor is trying to say, as Mark rightly highlighted. Now, you're talking about the big players, and these are not even the small entrepreneurs. These are not even those that actually needed the loans. Now, if you look at what has happened in the banking sector, with the first big 5 who went under, and now these other 3, making a total number of 8 of them, or virtually all the names who were actually fingered in all they call some kind of financial underdealings. We're not even the little man who you want to call the small scale businessman. So it goes back to what the man has been trying to say, that look, this is the way to go. But away from that, add to this, they gave them September 30 as deadline to recapitalize or the move in. The last time we checked, I think this is August. Are we in September?
We are not yet in September. That's why I'm of the opinion that it's, I wouldn't know the management committee or the advisors it constitutes behind him. Because take for example now, you are looking at a situation whereby you needed to set up the advisory committee on Sharia so as to be able to advise on Islamic Council. Does it mean now that if another type of non-interest bank comes, you now set up another committee? What we are trying to say is that let us have your economic roadmap and let Nigerian economic stakeholders follow it to the letter. And okay, you have finished phase 1, you are moving to phase 2. From phase 2 to phase 3. Then we will now be able to say, okay, yes, you are actually doing things. Because we have the situation whereby somebody comes and bulldoze you with one structure, and we don't actually know whether we're actually there or not. I want to register my economic applaud to CBN governor, to most of all this gesture. But what we are actually saying is that proper implementation, carry entrepreneurs along.